McCoy, and welcome to the View From A Pew. My co-host Steve is here, Steve Arts.
That is correct.
I got it right for once. And I'm Mac McCoy, and today we're going to talk about sin. And hold on, before you push the button, we're going to actually have an intelligent conversation about sin. This is not, I repeat, this is not a hellfire and damnation sermon coming from a podium or a pulpit. This is actually a conversation about sin. And Steve's and my hope is when we're done with this program today, you'll understand more of why God crucified himself as his son to save our sins, to forgive our sins, to put sin aside so we can spend eternity with him. All right, Steve, I'll turn it over to you. Let's fire forward. Go ahead.
Well, good morning,
Good morning.
good afternoon, and good evening. So there's some questions that we need to talk about and answer them. And the first one that comes up is the obvious, is what is sin? Now, sometimes it's easier to say what something isn't to explain what it is. So let's talk about what people tend to say, then talk about if that makes any sense. So I hear things like sin is real, but people are basically good at heart. Now, we can do that, but when you do that, it simply is saying that we're culturally comfortable dismissing sin, because basically everybody good at heart means that, well, sin really doesn't sound like it should be a possibility. But if we ignore sin and the fact that that exists, we don't recognize their love affair with the disobedience to God. Now think about that. It's a love affair with sin, and I mean it just that way. Because if you're disobeying God, you have to be in love with your sin. Because sin is a life-threatening spiritual disease with eternal consequences. What do you think of that, Mac?
Well, I think you're right.
Really?
But I would hope I'm not in a love affair with sin. I hope I'm in a addiction to sin or sinful nature. In other words, in my opinion, and I don't know if you'll agree with this or not, there's not a day that goes by that we don't sin. I don't think anybody can go probably a half a day without sinning. And I actually know some good Christian men, a few of them actually, who will say, no, I've beat sin. I don't have sin anymore.
Now, I can just see the hair bristling out there. All these porcupines out there ready to just throw their quills at us. And that's not really real anyway, but nevertheless, about throwing them. But when you think of sin, you say, well, I didn't do anything really wrong today. Well, there's two types of sin. And one is called commission, when you actually do something wrong.
Okay.
The other is omission, when you just don't do something right. Now, if you think about it in that context, we all sin all the time, because there isn't a time in our day that there isn't something more we can do. So if you look at it in that context, you don't have to be a bad guy all the time to be sinning if you take it in totality.
Well, and here's the other part, and I always go to the part of the gospel in which Jesus is hanging on the cross, and one of the last things he says is, Father, Father, why have you forsaken me?
I say that exact same thing, only I say Mac, because I feel like you've forsaken me every time we get on this air and you leave me hanging, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I like to leave you hanging.
I know, and you really enjoy it, and that's what sin's all about.
Yeah.
You've got to, sorry, Mac, you just might have
Oh,
said
good example.
But truly, and you really will be in love. Now,
well, let me finish my statement, though.
Sure.
Why did Jesus say, God, you have forsaken me? It's because God had to look away for that split moment from his son, because he's not able to look at sin. And it's the first and only time God and Jesus have not been as one.
Well, not only that, but Jesus is human. He has the actual feelings of being forsaken. That's really important to understand, that he went through the full anguish as we would go through it. And that is key. So even though he's the most powerful whatever, he cannot, out of respect for his father, do anything but honor his wishes and suffer the full impact as a human being. And that is immense. That's immense.
Yeah.
Now, the question might be raised out from the audience. I wish you guys would just call in and say, hey, here's a question. But here the question is, okay, give me proof of sin. Give me proof that people really understand sin. Give me proof that they actually have a conscience. So I have an example.
Okay.
Recently, astronomer CEO Andy Bryan and his chief human resource officer, Kristen Cabot, who are both married to other people, were embraced in their arms. And at that point, this was at a...
Is this that kiss camera thing?
This is that Coldplay concert.
Okay.
So they're anonymous. Nobody knows they're there until the kiss cam flashed in on them. And that became a sin on display. How do we know that? It's very simple. Chris Martin, the lead singer for Coldplay, stated the obvious. They appear to be having an affair. Immediately, they ducked for cover. They tried to get out of the way. No, didn't want anybody to see them. Loving does not include distrust, selfishness, and guilt. They had all three. Sin on display. And so you say, well, how can something like be so disgusting? How can they do that? How can they go from one extreme to the other? Well, the answer is it's because they lied to themselves and to each other. That's what sin is. Sin is the instinct to hide your conscience. And sin is hiding everything, including an affair. It's the same old story of a tawdry affair. Now, what made it so extremely interesting is the fact that we had somebody that sure didn't need to do this. They have all the fame, fortune. They certainly didn't hide in a closet. They were out there full display, but boy, oh boy, they got caught.
Well, and here's something interesting, and some people don't know this. The man, whatever his name is, and you don't need to say it again, the man was going through a divorce with his wife.
Oh, I didn't know that at the time.
Yes. Now, she was married, and she says that she was going to leave her husband, but they didn't want to get a divorce at the same time. Now, but I say that because they were still sinning.
Yeah, it doesn't really justify it, does it?
No, I'm not trying to justify it at all, but it's not like they were hiding from the camera because nobody knew about them. There were a lot of people that knew about them. It just wasn't public.
Now, what's kind of interesting, though, you would think if they're so guiltless, they wouldn't have minded so badly. They weren't like having their clothes off or anything. They were just holding each other,
Well,
right?
and you know what this reminds me of, to be honest with you? Somebody put something on Facebook or social media, and 1 minute, 3 minutes, 10 minutes later, whatever it is, they say, that might have been a mistake. So they delete it, thinking that it's gone forever. No, it's not. It's always there. It's always there. And by them turning around and ducking is the same thing as deleting something off of social media. We already saw it. And it will be there forever and ever and ever. It will always be, that embrace will always be a part of our culture, because you can always go back and look at it.
So really the question that I guess we ask is who sins? And the answer, if you haven't already guessed it, and I think we've alluded to it already, is everyone.
Yeah.
Yeah, those that know God know they sin. Those that deny their conscience or try to, whatever, they may not realize it, but we all sin. Now, then the question becomes, I'm trying to be logical about this on a moral moral level, trying to put some logic in this as a human being. So why do we sin? There's got to be reason for that. So
you want me to give you the biblical reason?
Well, give me any reason. Actually, would be a good place to start, but biblical would be fine.
Okay, all right. Let me give you something that isn't biblical. We sin because there's something we want, and somebody said no.
Can I tell you what that was?
Sure.
Pleasure.
Okay, there you go.
Now, craving for pleasure is God's rival. Now, you might say, well, pleasure, you think sexual. Yeah, that's part of it, no question. But it can be power. It can be anything.
Yep.
That's all pleasure. It can be food. It can be the ship. It can be whatever you want to do, And basically, when you're doing that, you're serving Satan. And how do you know that you're serving Satan? How do you know? Because pleasurable sin never satisfies. As soon as, challenge everybody to think about this, as soon as you commit, any of us commit sin, immediately all we can think about is maybe sinning again to get that pleasure. It creates, it just a vicious circle.
Now, by the way, this is Steve Arts and Mac McCoy, and this is The View from a Pew. And Steve is an excellent writer, and so he really creates the curriculum that we're teaching when he's on the air. I want to give you credit for that. Sin comes from sinful nature,
Correct.
and sinful nature equals not of God.
Correct.
And so when we say pleasure, I don't want people to think God doesn't want us to have pleasure, but God invented marriage.
Right. He made wine at the marriage. He certainly wanted pleasure. So, and no question about it. We're talking about pleasure that is in the way that we turn from God. So, say for example that wine now, instead of celebrating the marriage, we're turning to drunkenness and we're turning to sloth and we're turning. That's using it for a wrong reason. It's using it in a negative way. It certainly has nothing to do with serving God. Now, to even further cement this, let's go to the Rolling Stones. Now,
Okay.
that's about secular.
Mick Jagger, who is 72 years old.
Yeah, it's amazing he's alive. But nevertheless, one of their famous songs is, the lyrics, I can't
always get what you want. Oh,
I
no.
can get no satisfaction.
Right, okay.
But I try and I try. Man, that tells you what sin is.
Yeah.
It cannot satisfy. It's like drinking salt water in the middle of the ocean, and you're gonna say, "Wow, I'm worse," and you just create a bigger pit, a bigger addiction. It is truly, it serves the same purpose as an addiction.
Well, and also the thing, as we talked about a moment ago, in a marriage, no, you may not be married in a church. No, you may only get a license to marry, and therefore a judge marries you. But somewhere along the line, if you're to call it a marriage and you get a marriage license, marriage is of God. That's why so many Christians don't think that the LGBTQ group should have marriage. It's really not that what you're doing is so horrible to us. It's that God said marriage is made between a man and a woman. Now, I don't want to get on that subject because everybody knows how I feel about sin. Sin is a lot of different things, and if you're a sinner, then you and I are the same. Whether you're gay and in a gay relationship, or you're an alcoholic, or you're lusting, or you're eating too much, or you had an abortion, or you got a divorce. That's all, and here we go, quote unquote, not of God. Therefore, if it's, quote unquote, not of God, the Bible calls it a sin.
So then the next question I ask myself is, what's so dangerous about sin? I mean, if it's personal, let's say it's behind the closed doors, there's songs like that, behind closed doors, and what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas. By the way, that may not be totally true. I'm sorry if I blew a cover on that. I mean, for you people that believe that, hey, Madison, or what's his name, that says have an affair, life is short. Well, yeah, life is short, and it'll seem a lot longer after that.
Yeah.
But the point is, what is the danger if we just what's personal? How can personal sin cause ramifications that's dangerous?
Let me give you an answer that I believe is not the only answer, but it falls in this category. Every sin begins with a lie.
Correct.
You can't, I got to be careful here. I don't believe you can sin without a lie. Gee, that lady's pretty, and I know I'm married, or I know she's married, but God won't care. I can still go to church as an adulterer. Yes, you can. There are a lot of churches out there that will accept two people having an adulterous affair if they're in the congregation. There are many that won't, but some do. And I'm not going to make a judgment on one or the other. However, you can't get away from the fact that that sin began with a lie.
Well, sin starts with same thing you're saying, deception.
Yeah.
Evil is deception. You lie to somebody else and you lie to yourself. Now, let's go into something real world again, okay? So now we're not going on the big cam shower or a camera, but
The kiss cam?
yeah, kiss cam. I mean, that's just a beautiful thought. They should have been kissing. It would have just made the right. Anyway, be that as it may. So on September 10th, Charley Kirk was assassinated. Now,
Oh, man.
this is a radical ideology, okay? This has grown poisonous, you know? So this is what really is an unraveling of a nation. We know because the moral foundation is being corroded. It's just going. And we know that Paul mentioned that when we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but we wrestle against principalities and powers, Satan, and the only cure is renewal, okay? Our moral foundation is being eroded. So we got to have virtue in order for freedom to survive. Without truth, freedom is illusion. Without God, no nation can stand. Now, to me, a nation falling sounds to me a bit dangerous.
Oh,
Would you say?
yeah.
I'm not indestructive,
Yeah.
which both terms fit evil.
Sodom and Gomorrah.
Yeah. And so, so you know, and think about this. Since this killing, I have read so many different articles of how many people have been fired. I think over 100 in Texas alone in education because on either in person or on their web pages and social media, they're saying how great it was, that event. And I'm telling you what, when you've got this type of thing, if you can't have your way and you think the only thing you can do then is destroy, I call that a moral dilemma,
Yeah.
you know? And
It's very dark inside of our souls.
yeah. And if you don't realize it, the number one idol, and we talked about this on earlier podcasts, but is ego worship.
Mm-hmm.
We are so destined to want our way that we are willing to let anything happen or do anything to have our way. So if we don't like somebody because he represents something we don't like, killing him is okay because it's important to me.
Now, let Steve Arts and Mac McCoy here with you. This is The View From A Pew, and we appreciate you watching and listening. Let's dig a little deeper on that. That you think if you don't agree with somebody, you can kill them. Now, let's not just simply say, oh, well, that's sin. That's evil. And somebody's going to pop me for this. I know they are. But if you think it's okay for somebody to be murdered because of what they're saying, our society doesn't even hardly ever kill people because they kill people. You know, in this case that we're talking about, there is capital punishment in the state of Utah. I don't think that'll happen. He may be given the death sentence, but I don't think it'll ever happen. But my point is that even as a society, we say that murder is wrong. So if you aren't committing murder, but you're okay with someone else doing it, that makes you culpable.
Not only that,
I've
but
never cheered for somebody being killed.
no, what?
Even in my worst of days, when I didn't know Jesus, I would never have cheered for someone who was murdered in cold blood.
Well, and here's an example of where if you feel that way, you are lying to yourself. You are lying to yourself. You're compromising your moral standing. No question about it. Whether you like it or not, I don't care.
Well, can I make it worse?
Sure.
You're dancing a jig with the devil.
Yeah, that's true. You know, it's true. And you know, he loves pride because pride will get him what he wants. He loves destruction. He loves chaos. He loves division. Well, that's what we got going on, guys. And, you know, these professors are getting, by the way, professors at the college level are saying good for him and they're getting fired, as they should. Because here's the thing, no matter what you believe in this country, you've got to believe in upholding law, because without law being upheld, you cannot stand as a country.
Well, let's also add in on this Charlie Kirk thing, but let's also add in the fact that the young man admitted it. Other people knew he was going to do it. When he was confronted with whether he did it or not, he said, "Yes, I did."
And he's not repentant.
And he's right. He's not repentant. He is in no way sorry that he did what he did. Does he deserve to die?
Oh, by the way, we talked about evil versus crazy. This guy isn't, this guy is not
No,
mentally
he's
ill.
not crazy at all.
No, he knows exactly what he's doing.
Yeah.
He knew why he did it.
Yep.
And he's proud of it.
Yep.
That's evil.
Yeah.
No ifs, ands, or buts about that.
I like this part that you wrote in your article that this is found in the Barna Group, that 84% agree that sin exists. You know what's crazy about that, Steve?
No.
16% think it doesn't.
Well, yeah, yes, that's scary.
16% of people don't think that sin exists. I want to meet one. I want to meet somebody who believes that 100% sin, because when you say something doesn't exist, it doesn't mean that there's a little of it. You're saying sin doesn't exist.
Yeah, and then when you just use the word sin, that can mean, well, maybe they think it just of, well, yeah, murder or stealing, that's sin, but maybe it really doesn't say the whole. You asked me earlier what this word meant, if I remember right. You said, what is the biblical meaning of concupiscence?
Yeah, I've never heard that word. I don't even think I could say it.
So I guess I just lied. No, he did not. Mac did not ask me that question. I asked him that question.
Yeah.
Because Mac wants me to always bring up one word that challenges.
Aha, that is true. You
That
do
is
that,
true.
don't you?
That is true, and that keeps me dancing.
Yeah, the other day it was hungry. I didn't understand what hungry meant.
I know, because you're always so well fed and always go to restaurants, always invite. So why this is important is that concupiscence refers to an inherent human inclination or strong desire to sin, often associated with lust or cardinal appetites. It is considered a lingering consequence of the fall of man, result of original sin, more than the sin itself. Now, the reason this becomes interesting is the term emphasizes the internal fallen nature of humanity that predisposes us to sin. And this was originally explored by theologians like Augustine and Calvin. The reason I'm bringing all this up is that this word puts into motion the explanation, the foundation of sin. It does a real good job, one word, of telling where that comes from and what it is. And so here we are constantly, because of our fallen nature, being tempted to sin. Now that's important to understand. We're always tempted.
I got a question for you. If someone commits a sin and they don't know it's a sin, is it still a sin? If someone commits a sin but they don't know it's a sin, is it still a sin?
Good question. So Jesus would go up to people and forgive them, and they would say, well, how could he go up to a Roman soldier? How could he go up to a tax collector? Because he knew their
prostitute.
Because he knew their heart. So to answer your question, externally, certain acts are sin by definition.
Yeah.
But we don't know their heart. So to answer your question, did they sin? Not if the intent's not there. You got to have the intent. You've got to have the intent. By the way, though, Mac, I'm going to tell you, no. Satan don't make you sin. Now, that's one of Mac's big things.
Yeah.
Satan makes me sin. No, he doesn't.
Okay.
No, he doesn't. Why?
Okay.
Because I know he tempts you.
Okay.
Because he tempts me.
Okay.
But you have the final say. Now, he may have 90. He could have. But you got the final 1%.
Well, I say Flip Wilson was right.
Well, I know he wasn't.
The devil made me do it.
Well, in his case, he may have. But
Now, I'm going to go to a bigger picture for a second, just for 30 seconds. Who created sin? Was it God? Did he create sin? He created our ability to say yes or no. That was a gift that he gave us, that we could make up our own mind. If it wasn't for Satan, now follow me here, there would be no sin. So, yes, I'm responsible for failing to make the right choice, but I didn't make myself sin.
Okay.
I made a poor choice that wasn't of God, which I do every day.
Now, I'm all for giving people. In this way, I could honestly say this: I'm all for giving the devil his due. But that sin was not committed by Satan; it was by our own free will of choice. So again, Satan is powerful, but he's not all-knowing. He's not all-powerful, and God gave us the power to choose. Now, he tempted us because we got to prove our worth. God's having us go through some hoops here. That's true.
Okay, but so what you're saying is I can live a sinless life.
I didn't say that.
Well, yeah, you are, because I have to choose to do it, you're saying.
We got a lot of choices. That was one choice.
Yeah, but all right, this is I don't know if this is the conversation or another conversation, but and I love you, so you can think differently than me. I'll forgive you. But the fact of the matter is, the way I see it, my opinion, the fact of the matter is God did not create sin. Satan did. And we would not sin if it wasn't for Satan. Therefore, sinful nature lives within us because you can't go a day without a sin.
I just don't, a question I really ask you might love me, but do you like me? To answer your question.
When you bring me food, I really like you more.
I know. That Casey's keeps getting filled up too.
Oh, man.
So I still think you're giving Satan way too much power. I mean, he's not an equal to God. It's not like evil over here, good's over here, and it's equal. He's just one little creation of his. And I mean, he's like a fly in the ointment. But he's not. You're giving him too much. You're giving Satan too much power, and you're not giving human beings enough power. In other words, we are much more culpable, as you said, than we would like to admit.
Then why did Charley Kirk get assassinated?
Because we have, as a country, lost sight of who's boss and who we should be honoring.
Correct.
We are not honoring God. We're honoring ourselves.
Correct.
We're honoring, this is off a subject. It's a philosophical thing, but not theological. But the thing that makes the world go round, the thing that has the most impact, always are ideas. Always.
Yeah.
In no exception. And so what happens in the case of this poor fellow being killed is somebody gets caught up in some ideology, which is a philosophy, which is a idea.
Yeah.
And it takes over. And when that happens, we have turned our attention away from God towards something else. No question.
All right. Now, I want to move this conversation on with the different denominations and stuff. But before so, I want to say something. And there is people out there saying that, well, Charley said this and Charley said this. He's a homophobic. He's a racist. He's a fascist. He's da-da-da-da-da. If you watch any one of Charley's videos, I'm defending him here.
Right.
When you ask the question, well, are you okay with sex out of marriage? Charley repeated the question. Because he was at a big arena, and sometimes that little microphone over there in front of the person couldn't be heard.
Right.
So what he didn't say is, the question is homosexuality bad, or is stealing bad, or, whatever it is. Charley never, and I'll go to my grave with this, he never was a racist.
No.
Or a homophobic. He was simply repeating the question. And the thing that makes me sad is that some people aren't smart enough to realize that.
Well,
or they don't want to realize it.
Yeah, think about it this way too. we're putting Christianity always in defense. It should be sometimes in offense. In other words, if you're non-Christian, shouldn't we should we kill you then? Is that then there's all kind of clamor. Oh no, you can't do that. No, what's the difference? In other
Yeah.
words, a human being is a human being.
Right.
Now, go a step further. I learned this morning. He's a Catholic. Okay. Now, interesting because if people like Mac right now, he's in awe. He's like, really? Yeah, I didn't know that either. I knew his wife was, but he was a Catholic too. Now, interesting about that is everybody would testify this because a lot of my Protestant friends already have seen this, is he doesn't act like he's not going back to what the Catholic Church is saying or the hierarchy, nothing like that at all. He's looking at it totally biblically, totally just from the total Christian perspective, not one denomination. Okay? So this to further reinforce what Mac was saying, this guy was as straight as could be. He was doing everything he could to respect the dignity of every person he talked with. And that is what Jesus
Yeah.
did, was
Yeah.
protect the dignity. That's why he could go up to the tax collector. That's why he could go up to Matthias. He could go up to Zacharias and everybody, Mary Magdalene, the whole gap, because he respected their dignity. And that's what being a Christian is. And that's what being a good human being is. But, in the process of giving up on Christianity, as the world seems to be trying to do, they are inviting in everything else, and that ain't good.
Yeah. Atheism is a religion. And I'll argue with you all day long if you look at the basis of a religion. If you don't agree with one, you do agree with something because you're standing before me arguing with me. So, what is it that you believe in? Well, it comes down to whatever is God is what you don't believe in.
Yeah, there's a concern of accountability too. Like, are we at fault individually? Are the leaders of the church at fault? Are we both at? There's one thing I want to cite here. In 2019, there's a Pew Research study that analyzed sermon content across the nation. Only 3% of all sermons preached even mentioned sin. That's important because if you don't identify it even existing, how can you admit that it is there? How can you do something about it in your own lives? So there's plenty of blame to go around. In other words, you keep throwing this mud. I always look at a white wall, and you throw mud at a white wall, and it just shows every speck. Now, if you take a black wall and you throw white at it, it's not quite the same effect.
No.
So a little bad goes a long ways, and it really sticks easy. It stands out. And we have really seen really a bad job of painting going on as far as painting our lives. We're painting ourselves in, and we are forgetting and ignoring that sin lives, or sin exists, I should say. And by doing that, we're allowing it to damage our society.
Yeah, and you got to have enough respect for somebody. Like we do that program here on this platform called Point Counterpoint. And basically it's a discussion of one side of the aisle with the other side. But we never call each other names. We don't get out of bounds. We stay in bounds, and those bounds are determined by goodness and honesty. And as I just said, boundaries of each other's needs. When you tell someone that their boundary of I follow Jesus and I try to be like him all I can, and you tell me that that's not good enough, and then you cheer for somebody who died, was killed because they believe that, what does that make you?
Makes you immoral.
I mean, it doesn't make you either side of the aisle. We're going to have the program on Friday, and we're not going to get into this crap of blaming one on one side of the aisle or not. That is childish.
Well, I think George Barna, who you referred to earlier, he does a lot of polling and such and a lot of studies. But, we just talked about how pastors aren't preaching about sin. Let's talk about personal implications of sinful living. Basically, what he found in his studies is that we have become desensitized to persistent sins. So in other words, we want to persist So we try to obscure reality. And we do this by crafting narratives, that make our choices feel inevitable, excusable, and get this, even noble. So when you can start making bad look good, we've kind of lost it. And then
Yeah.
we've done that. So what happens? Well, we go spiritually bankrupt. Bankruptcy has consequences.
Yeah.
And that's what we're doing.
Well, and from a political standpoint, we are all imperfect. And I don't believe that anyone is so much better or so much worse than the person on the other side. I just don't believe that. Bad is bad, good is good, and neither one of us are all of them.
It's almost like it's almost like we're in the Tower of Babel, that we seem to talk the same language, but we can't seem to communicate at any level beyond preconceived notions. It's like we really don't hear what the person is saying, misconstrue it to be offensive, and only can repeat what we've already heard without understanding what we said. Do you ever lose a thought? You know how hard it is to think
I was
about?
just going to say something. I
Yeah,
can't remember what it was.
You just lost a thought. It's hard to think of a thought if you lost it, right?
Yeah, right.
Well, if you don't have a thought to begin with and everything coming in your head is thoughts from somebody else, pretty soon you don't have much you don't think.
Yeah.
You don't think. We got a bunch of bumbling Indians repeating things they've heard. They don't hear, they can't think. The critical thinking has been lost.
Well, when we do our show next Tuesday, I want to pick up where we're left off today, because I want some people to think about what they heard on this and then email us, okay? And you can email me at MAC, at theviewfromapew.com. You can also email me at MAC@McCoy, which is MCKOY.net. So there's a lot of different ways. You can also reach out to me on your social media. Or you can just stop me on the street or catch me at church and say, hey, I heard you say this the other day, and I want to ask you a question. See, that's what Charley did. Charley said, you can ask me anything, and I'll do my best to answer it. But I'll also debate with you on why you think that way. And what we've done with this program today is to start a thought of thinking, a process of thinking, with the basis and the bottom line being sin.
Are we closing pretty soon?
Yep.
I want to leave you with a thought.
Okay.
It's one of my originals.
Do you still remember it? Or
Yes.
did you lose that thought?
No, I wrote it down just in case I would forget.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. But I wrote it down because I thought it was kind of a good thought. See if you guys agree. If you agree, let me know. If you don't, keep it to yourselves. Please.
Hey.
Anyway, while we are free to sin, we are not free when we sin. When we sin, we create our own prisons.
Yeah.
And that is what's damaging.
Yep. Well, I want to thank you very much for listening to this today. This is called The View From A Pew. These programs are on social media, and they're also on our YouTube page at The View From A Pew. The View From A Pew. And thanks for listening. Have a great day.